Hey guys, Lynette here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use our skinny Synclastic bracelet former to make a really cool ring. Let's get started.
Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is roller print a texture on my silver. I've got 18 gauge sterling silver here that I have already annealed and a rolling mill pattern plate from PotterUSA. I'm going to put this in the rolling mill, tighten it down until everything's nice and tight. Then I'm going to open the rolling mill back up so I can pull my little sandwich out, tighten it back down to where it was, and then make it a little bit tighter. And then I can start rolling. So I can tell just by feel that it's a little bit too tight. I want to be able to, have to use a fair amount of muscle, but not have to put all of my body weight into rolling this through. So that feels pretty good. I'm going to roll it through, and then we'll take a look at it. Nice, I got a great impression. And this particular pattern plate is designed to work with the PotterUSA wide cigar band pancake die. So I've got that pancake die here. It's going to cut this cool kind of saddle shape ring. I've placed it so the design lines up with the pancake die, and then I'm going to center that in my press, making sure that the cutting area is all completely covered with a spacer. And then I'm going to cut that out. All right, so I've got my shape cut out here, pull off the excess metal, and then use just a rawhide mallet to kind of tap that stamping out. Just gently tap on the back side, and my piece will fall right out. And so now I just need to go cut off these tabs. I'm going to do that with my jeweler's saw. Just remove the tabs from the pancake die. And I really like the design from this pattern plate. It's like a henna inspired design. So it's got like a very kind of boho vibe. All right, and then we're just going to file the saw marks from the edges and smooth them out. And now I'm going to make sure that I'm making the proper ring size for myself. And there's lots of different ways to do this. There's charts you can follow. I'm doing it kind of the lazy man's way. So I just took a strip of paper, wrapped it around my finger that I want the ring to fit. I'm going to mark it with a Sharpie. And then I'm going to add the thickness of the metal to that overall length. And I'm going to cut off the excess on either side. So because this is 18 gauge metal, I know that it's a millimeter thick. So right now I'm just holding it up against my ruler to get the overall length. I'm going to mark that on here. I'm going to cut my ring blank 68 millimeters long. And so because of the way this design falls on the ring, I'm going to mark the halfway point on here so I can cut a little bit off of either end of the ring. Otherwise, the design that I roller printed, if I just cut off excess material from one side of the ring, the design will be kind of uneven. So I marked center on the blank here, and then I'm marking how much I need to cut off on either side based on the length I decided that I needed. And I'm just going to remove that material, making sure to keep my ends as square and even as possible so that when I go to solder, the ends line up. Okay, so I've removed those pieces. We'll just file those ends a little bit. Make sure they're nice and flush to each other when they're bent around. Okay, looks pretty good. And then there's just a little burr from the pancake die, so I'm going to remove that with the file as well. And it's actually easier to sand and finish the inside of the ring when the ring is still flat. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm using my favorite flex shaft tool here. It's a PSA sanding disc. And once that's done, then I'm ready to anneal the ring blank for forming. So I'm just going to heat this up to annealing temperature. And then pickle and clean it and dry it. And now we're ready to form. I'm using PotterUSA's new small skinny Synclastic former. And here's my annealed ring blank. And what I want to do is I want to form a little hump on the center of this cigar ring band. I don't want it to be just flat on my finger. And so I'm using this former to do that. And I'm just starting at one end and using the press and this former to form that center area of the ring. So you can see how it's starting to form. I'm going to flip it around here and kind of do the other side a little bit. Just kind of gently taking steps to form that central area into a dome. All right, that looks pretty good. I've got a little wrinkle up on the top here, but don't worry about that. We can smooth that out when we use the ring mandrel to form the rest of the ring. So now I'm back over to my bench. I'm going to use the ring mandrel to bring the ends of the ring around, and I'm not worried about making this into a ring shape yet. All I'm worried about is bringing those ends together for soldering. We will form the rest of the ring round after soldering. So I just need to bring these two ends together nice and flat for soldering so I can get a nice butt seam. I'm going to use my nylon hammer to just smooth out those kind of kinked areas where the ring transfers from, you know, the band to that upper wider area. That transition, it got a little kinked there. So I can just really gently smooth that out with my nylon mallet and then bring those ends down so that they come together. It's pretty stiff from forming. I didn't anneal it after forming it in the press. You can if you're having a hard time bringing those ends together. I'm just going to use my nylon mallet to kind of encourage it to do what I want, bringing those ends together. And I want to make sure they're nice and tight so I can get a good solder joint. That looks pretty good. So now we are ready to solder. I'm actually going to solder on the inside of the seam because if I solder on the outside, the solder will flood that roller mill design, and I don't want that to happen. So I have fluxed my ring and I'm heating it up. My flux is nice and warm now. It's clear and glassy. I'm placing my little tiny solder chips on the inside of that seam. All right, so now you can see them on the inside of that seam. I'm just going to heat the ring until the solder flows. And I like to heat on the reverse so it kind of uses the heat to draw the solder through that seam. Okay, that looks pretty good. That little solder chip on the end didn't flow, so I'm flipping it over and continuing to heat. Until that piece flows. All right, that looks pretty good. We'll pickle it and clean it. All right, this is fresh out of the pickle. It looks pretty great. The solder flowed. So now I'm ready to just form this ring round. I'm going to stick it back on the ring mandrel and use my nylon mallet again to form it the rest of the way. You don't want to hit on that upper area that you formed in the hydraulic press. So I'm just tapping the rest of the ring band, but not that central domed area. Make sure you flip the ring because the ring mandrel is tapered. You want to take it off and flip it so that you get the ring evenly round. Okay, that looks pretty good. A little bit more round in one area. Nice. So then my final steps are just finishing, sanding and finishing the ring up. So I'm going to take it back to the bench and use the flex shaft. I'm going to kind of smooth out this solder seam as gently as I can without removing the pattern from the rolling mill. And again, I like to use these PSA sanding discs. And then I also use a variety of silicone wheels. This particular one I think is a fine. I don't need to do a lot of sanding on this because there's not a lot of scratches or anything. I'm just kind of refining, polishing. And then sanding the inside of the ring to remove the excess solder. And once that's done, I'm ready for cleaning and patina. I like to use Black Max for silver. It makes it nice and black. Rinse it off, remove the patina from the high spots and polish. And then I've got this fun formed Synclastic ring. And that's it.